Hello. Come on in, everybody. This is always such a fun part, getting everybody to virtually come into the room. It's a very sunny day in San Francisco, so thank you so much for joining us. Still got some people trickling in. My name is Jen Stojkovic. I'm the Executive Director of sf.citi. We are San Francisco's Tech Trade Association. We're really excited about tonight's conversation. We're joined by sea.citi, which you might have guessed is our Seattle counterpart organization, as well as Protocol, a new fast-growing media company focused on tech. We're going to be talking to an incredible lineup of speakers tonight. We're very, very excited for many of the folks that are going to be joining us. We're going to be talking about how they've handled the COVID-19 pandemic, the challenges they faced, what they've learned, and what about the tech industry will never be the same. So, as your host, I have a few quick housekeeping notes for today's conversation. I'll try to go through these really fast so we can get to some of the amazing speakers. First, tonight is going to be divided into 4 15-minute fireside chats, as well as one 55-minute panel conversation. The panel conversation is going to start after the fireside chat. We are going to be answering audience questions tonight after the panel discussion. If you want to ask a question, please write it in the QA box right down there. We're going to be filling up that QA box all evening, so feel free to ask a question at any time throughout the evening. We are going to do our best to answer all of the questions via chat or live with the panelists after our discussion. If you are joining us through Facebook, please note that you have to join through Zoom, and that is where we are going to be doing all of the questions for today's discussion. This webinar is being recorded and live streamed. If you missed something, don't worry, we will be sharing it out afterwards. Lastly, this is the social media plug. You know it's coming. Please share your thoughts about today's discussion on social media using the hashtag #RaceToRespond. All right, so we all getting ready? This is where usually the audience does some sort of woo. So I'm gonna hope that everybody is ready to start today's discussion. Without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to welcome up Janet Van Ice, Head of People at Cloudflare.
Hi, Jen. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Janet. How are you? I'm loving the background.
Thank you. I'm hiding. My new home office is my children's playroom. I have 3 daughters, and I'm hiding the big mess that's behind me. So now you get the Cloudflare lava lamps, which is much more on brand for us in this conversation.
That's awesome. Well, welcome, Janet. If you'd like to tell us really quickly what Cloudflare is and what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Cloudflare is a cybersecurity company. We just went public in September of last year. We have over 27 million internet properties that are using our services, and we block 45 billion, that's billion with a B, cyber attacks every day.
Wow. Okay, so I imagine cybersecurity got really popular really fast when we all went remote.
Yeah, that is true. The last few months have been, we've seen quite an uptick in the need for our services and products, and we've been really glad to be able to, provide them.
So as the head of people for Cloudflare, you had quite a daunting task ahead of you. Tell us how you took a publicly traded company remote in such a short period of time. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we did early that we really benefited from is we very quickly assembled a business continuity team. And it was geographically diverse, it was cross-functional. And so I kind of had like a whole squad to work with. And there were many advantages to that, as you might imagine. One of them was we were able to get information from all of our offices around the world very quickly. And as everyone remembers, like the early stages of the pandemic, things changed so quickly that we really benefited benefit from someone on the ground to be like, well, this is what it's really like here in Singapore or in Munich or wherever the case may be. And then we quickly committed to regular communications with the company. So twice a week, they were hearing from the business continuity team what was changing around our practices, what was the latest news, trusted resources you could go to, and what were the measures that we were taking to keep everybody, safe, whether they were working from home or in our offices. So we had, an email and chat room and office hours and wiki pages. So we were really able to kind of quickly get really good, trusted information out to the employees and commit to do that on a regular basis. We had already had a weekly all hands. It was just part of the way that we operate as a company. And so when people did kind of disperse into working remotely, we were already used to coming together every week. And so we also were able to use that time to just kind of amplify message or keep things clear about what was going on across the company. And so I think that was kind of how we did it. It was really a major team effort, and that team, as you might imagine, still meets multiple times a week, and we're still communicating a ton and both sending and receiving information from our employees all around the world.
So what is that team comprised of? What kind of folks are on it?
It's led by people, IT, and security, but we have people from the sales organization and the product organization. We really wanted to make sure we had all the offices in all of our different regions of the world covered. And so we meet a few times a week. One time that's like a Europe friendly time, and then later that week we'll meet at an APAC friendly time, an Asia friendly time. And so, I mean, it really is kind of the breadth of the company.
Wow. Okay. So what concerns you about going completely remote? How did this go?
It's funny because Cloudflare, unlike a lot of tech companies, Cloudflare was a come into the office and get our work done there. And so you would think that basically turning on a dime and going virtual would have been disruptive, but it really wasn't. And I think part of it is we're a global company. We have 13 offices around the world in many different countries. So we're used to Zoom and Google Meet for meetings. We're used to collaborating online. And so that pivot was rather easy for us. I think the bigger lift was our new hire orientation. So Cloudflare is in a very privileged position that we're still hiring. We're still able to invest. The business is doing really well. And so we, pre-COVID, had a new hire orientation class every other week where everyone would come to San Francisco. So no matter what Cloudflare office you were working out of around the world, everyone came to San Francisco for at least a week, and it was great. And now we had to make that all virtual, which from a people perspective, the people team, it wasn't terribly hard to switch to virtual, but the poor IT team, they were used to handing a new hire, hey, here's your configured laptop and let me help you, figure out how to use it. And now it was like, okay, configure the workstations, laptops, ship them to sometimes very remote parts of the world in time for people to participate in new hire orientation out of their homes. And then we made their jobs even harder because in the past, when we had it on premises, we were constrained by the number of people we could fit in the training room. And we're like, okay, great, no more constraints on the training room. So let's increase the class size by 50%. And so we really did not help the IT team. Plus, the IT team set up their own distribution centers out of their home. It was spectacular just to watch it all come together. So that was probably the most challenging part of it, other than just the craziness of the circumstances in which we're all working from home. Can't forget to say that. Not just working from home, right?
Also a pandemic, quite a few things going on.
In place, schools closing, risks of physical harm. It's not normal.
It's wild. Yeah. So what surprised you out of this?
So, it's funny. I think I surprise people when with kind of my response to it, because, I talk to a lot of candidates before we hire folks at Cloudflare, and I get asked a lot, what has changed about your culture because of COVID? And my answer is nothing. COVID's changed nothing about our culture. COVID has amplified our culture. So Cloudflare's always been high empathy, high collaboration, very mission driven. And I feel like now that we've all gone, to working from home, it's just amplified that. You just see that empathy and the understanding of, your situation is different than mine. And yeah, usually I show this messy playroom and lots of interruptions. So we're all getting to know each other better. Empathy is coming out in spades. And then the collaboration, like I said, we were kind of used to doing that anyway. The other thing that it's been really astounding and is, Matthew Prince, our CEO, has this great, kind of story he tells about the internet being the trusted sidekick of the heroes of COVID. So the heroes of COVID are obviously the medical workers and essential workers and people on the front line and scientists working on the vaccine. But the trusted sidekick to all that is the internet, right? It tells us how the disease is tracking and how to stay safe and get tested, and helps us all work from home. And that's literally what our business is to keep the internet safe, fast, and reliable for everyone who uses it. And so we took kind of already this very mission-driven company and just amplified the impact of our work, because the internet feels more important now than ever. And our job is to make it better. And so it's kind of, people kind of always ask me what's changed. I'm like, nothing, it's just amped up.
So obviously onboarding, that's a bit different to do it completely virtual. I'm curious about other functions of the people team. You say that you're mission driven. And so I imagine employee resource groups and things like that. Obviously, a big one is, how is Pride Month going to go virtual for a lot of these companies? I'm curious how that has worked out.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned employee resource groups, because when I talked about that business continuity team, there are all these other teams that are helping around the company, and the ERGs have played a huge role for us. And so honestly, every time I turn around at Cloudflare, there's a new ERG. And they've done things like, mental health, like a focus on mental health. We have a mind flare group, a sober flare group that really cautioned us around how we sometimes like medicate or get through this by drinking, and what are some other healthier choices we can make. I was really inspired by their presentation at our all hands, because I was definitely drinking wine every night to get through the early days. And so I stopped doing that thanks to them. And so, the ERGs at Cloudflare are really about community and belonging. And so I really am grateful for all their efforts, because they are constantly coming up with new ways for us to stay connected and take care of each other. So they've been a big part of it. Pride, I don't know what our plans are yet, but I'll tell you what. We literally just had take your kids to work day virtually. So if we can do that, I know we can do something amazing around Pride.
That's awesome. So
it was amazing.
That's so cool. So there's a lot of people joining that are probably at companies that are trying to find a way to stay cohesive. Do you have any tips you want to share about how that's worked at Cloudflare with your ERGs?
Yeah, it's funny because, it's going to be different for different bodies of employees, right? So there are some that are like, hey, I'm really bored on the weekends, or not during or after work hours. We have like virtual game nights and movie nights. But then if you talk to a parent, they're like, oh my God, like I don't have any time. Like don't put anything else on my calendar. But one of the things that I really loved is we, in a few of our offices, we had yoga classes, like once a week. And that's all gone virtual. And it's amazing because, where I used to, kind of question whether it was worth it, we'd have like 5 people show up. We've got a ton of people showing up because like all the US offices in Europe are doing it together now. So, there's just lots of really fun ways we've brought people together, things that we were doing before that are much better virtually. So yeah, I'm really, enjoying like what we're learning in this process.
So you've got some morning yoga, some evening yoga, everybody's coming together. That's super cool.
Yeah, I guess games and movies and cooking classes, like lots of cool stuff is happening. I am barely participating, but yes, I know it's going on around me.
That's super interesting. You don't realize the physical constraints that probably are keeping the geographical employees apart. Now you can bring them together.
Yeah, I mean, it really has broken down so many of the barriers that we had before.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So as a global company, I'm really curious, how are you laying out those steps to what reopening could look like? Obviously, every city and country is in a different spot.
Yeah, so philosophically, the way that we're looking at this is that there's not a one size fits all solution, right? There's not a one size for our offices. There's not a one size for our employees, right? We've got everyone, like I said, on the all ends of the spectrum. From I'm, working, or I live alone and I haven't seen a three-dimensional human being in 7 weeks. Please let me go to the office. Or I've got a ton of roommates and we're all bumping into each other as we try to work full time. To I've got a bunch of kids and they're not going back to school until the fall, fingers crossed. Or, I've got underlying medical conditions or a loved one does. And so we have a from kind of the desire to get back to the office. So the way that we are thinking about it is we will open each office as quickly as we can, do so safely. And then we will, for those employees who really have a need to get back, their work from home situation is untenable for various reasons, we will get them back into the office as quickly as we can, as safe, when we can do so safely. And then for people who, with the myriad of other reasons why getting back to the office is something they're not interested in rushing into or cannot do for a while, like we will have all the flexibility for them to come back when the timing is right for them. So we're trying to be really flexible. And really give people agency over the timing for themselves, and then just like learn from each office opening. Like what we've got Munich. We have an office in China actually, so we have a Beijing office that closed very early at the start of the pandemic. They're now back and they've been alternating kind of A/B teams, like a red team and a yellow team. So they're together, orange, Cloudflare orange, kind of cute. But they're back, and then we were planning for the Munich office to reopen this month. And so we're going to learn from these offices reopening, and with each office that comes online, we're going to take that learning to the next one. And so that's really been our approach, like be really flexible, not one size does not fit all, be really, let people really decide the best timing for them. And, let's just first and foremost, make sure everybody's safe.
Awesome. One thing I was learning earlier from some of our members were, folks in places like Tokyo, those offices, typically they have really tiny apartments. And so every city's a little different in terms of how much the employees are trying to, get back to the office.
Yeah, and you think about how are you getting to the office, right? If you're taking public transportation, that's got more risk than someone who might be walking or biking. And so you start to realize that you need to consider things you didn't really think you might need to consider.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in closing, I'm really curious what permanent changes Cloudflare you think is going to make after this entire experience.
Yeah, we've been framing it as that we're not going back to normal. We're going back to better. And so, like I said earlier, Cloudflare was a come into the office. That was our kind of work practice and posture. And so we're going to take what was the best about coming into the office and working together there. And we're going to take the best of what we're doing right now in this virtual world. And that's going to be our back to better plan. So we're still really early stages. I think we'll probably keep the virtual yoga. We've been doing fireside chats with executives and board members, and those have been really fun. Just a little bit more informal way to see executives and hear them think about their job and what's kind of keeping them up at night. And so, but one of the things that I am actually really excited about was last month, we saw all of these companies cancel their internship programs, right? Because they're hit from, or they just couldn't wrap their heads around how would we do this virtually with college students. And so Cloudflare, being in a fortunate position to be able to invest, said, okay, we're going to double our internship this summer. And we had like a flood of applicants. Like we averaged 100 applicants per hour for the first few days. We end up with 10,000 applicants. We cannot hire 10,000 interns. So we're trying to do things to make sure that those students that we can hire have meaningful summer experiences, even if they're not at Cloudflare. But one of the things that was my big takeaway from it is because we went virtual, the applicant pool was so much more diverse than when it was come to San Francisco or come to Austin, Texas, or London, wherever we had the internships. And I am really excited about that because that diversity is great for us. And so I'm excited to be able to take that part, bring it into the back to better.
Awesome. All right. Well, Janet Van Ice, thank you so much for joining us.
So, thank you for having me. This is great.
All right. We will move on to our next. Okay. I'm going to bring up Nick Merriam, who is joining us from Seattle, sea.citi. All right.
Hi, Jen. Thanks.
All right.
Really appreciate you having me.
Okay, I'm gonna pop off now and you can bring up Tom.
Great. Tom, if you want to jump on here, there we go. Excellent. So hi, everybody. My name is Nick Merriam, and I am the CEO of Sea.citi here in Seattle. And as we all know, the West Coast was really the first to see the impact of COVID-19 and the first to respond. It's really great to be able to bring the Seattle perspective into the conversation this evening. And to do so, I'm here with Tom Alberg, who is the founder and managing director of Madrona Ventures, which is the largest VC firm here in the area. Hi, Tom. Nice to have you.
Hi, Nick.
Would you just take a minute and introduce yourself and Madrona so we can get a sense of what you do?
Sure. First, a little Seattle advertisement. It's a beautiful sunny day here. We're looking forward to a weekend. I think it's going to hit 80 or something, which is a heat wave up here. People cannot tolerate, temperatures like that. You just like probably San Francisco. So this is Madrona's 25th anniversary year. And over our first 25 years, we've invested in over 200 early stage tech companies, almost all of them in the Pacific Northwest. We lead first rounds, and we've worked with pretty much every leading venture capital firm in the Valley in follow-on rounds in our companies. And so Seattle, like the Bay Area, is a leading center of innovation. I think you all know Microsoft and Amazon, two of the three most valuable companies in the world, are headquartered here. They each have over 50,000 local employees. Now, to be fair, the other company in the top three is Apple, and the Valley has slots 4 and 5. So we share a lot. We also have over 140 global technology companies in Seattle with significant engineering offices, such as Google, Facebook, Apple, SpaceX, Alibaba, you name them. But for example, Google and Facebook each have over 5,000 employees in the Seattle area.
Great. Thanks for kicking that off. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit about how Madrona has been involved in the response to COVID-19. You were really involved in some of the earliest conversations in the Seattle area. And I'd love for you to take us back about 60 days and talk about how tech and the broader Seattle business community started early preparations for the impending pandemic.
Yes, Nick. As you indicated, Seattle was kind of the first epicenter, I think closely followed by California or San Francisco. But it wasn't really until late February and then the first week in March that we realized we had a serious pandemic that spread so easily with just being close to somebody. But once we all realized that, and we picked it up real quickly from the Hutch Cancer Care Institute here, which is a major global healthcare organization, who told us this is going to be really serious. And then about at that moment, Amazon and Microsoft closed their offices. And then shortly thereafter, the state issued a stay-home order that we're really still under, although businesses are slowly being authorized to reopen. But Madrona is a member of Challenge Seattle, which is an organization made up of the CEOs of 18 of the leading traditional and tech companies in the area. We're in there because we're representing the private tech companies in the area. So they took the lead very quickly in early March to set up pretty much every other day Zoom call at noon to share information among the companies and government leaders, the healthcare leaders. So we all were on the same page with respect to what was going on, particularly in healthcare, but also in identifying people and groups that are being hurt by the economic collapse that we're all seeing, and work together to try to meet those. And we can get into a little more detail in a minute if you want.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm really curious. I know Madrona has really taken a leadership role over the last month or so in helping tech prepare for recovery and really cope with the downturn. And you guys have put some fantastic structures into place, and I'd love for you to talk about those.
Sure. Well, like other venture firms, the first thing we did, of course, was up our level of involvement with our 70 portfolio companies. We quickly identified, do they have capital needs? Fortunately, a number of our companies were expecting a recession for the last couple of years, so we had urged people to raise money in advance, but not everybody did that. And then companies were immediately facing employee issues, just like Janet was talking about. And they needed to change their business plans, either actually shut down because they were consumer businesses, or come up with strategies to frankly grow their business if they were enterprise companies. So we did a lot of research, talked to big and small companies in the Seattle area, what they were thinking about in terms of get back to the workplace, reopening workplaces. And we held a webinar, which was attended by over 600 tech and other companies to talk about what steps they should start looking into. And then we also put out a get back to work toolkit, which is a fairly detailed toolkit about steps that companies need to consider in terms of going back to work. And it's actually now been downloaded over 5,000 times across the country. Even places like the Harvard School of Engineering downloaded it. So I think everybody's looking at it. Hopefully some of them are following it.
Yeah.
And you can actually, there is a website called backtoworktoolkit.com, which you can log on to. And if that doesn't work, you can log on to madrona.com, and I'm sure we have a link to it.
Great. I was just going to ask you for the plug. I want to shift the conversation a little bit and kind of move to the political environment. Right now, we're seeing all sorts of interesting partnerships crop up that previously seemed unthinkable. I'm curious what you're seeing out there, and from your vantage point, what you find to be particularly interesting in terms of these partnerships unfolding right now.
Yes. Seattle unfortunately shares with San Francisco some that we have a city council that too often sees businesses and tech as the enemy, and not someone who can help them solve, some of our similar civic problems: homelessness, housing, traffic, public safety. And I think temporary benefit of this crisis is that the political leaders are recognizing that businesses have something to contribute to solving these problems. And likewise, businesses who are sometimes reluctant to step forward, that they do need to step up and work on these problems. So as a result, really, the silver lining in all this is that government, local government, state government, nonprofits, and businesses are pulling together pretty effectively to help solve both underlying healthcare problems, but also these serious economic challenges to the region. So I think there's some good things happening.
Do you think that this really collaborative spirit that's starting to take shape in the face of a crisis, does that stay, or is that going to vanish here in a post-COVID world?
It's a good question. I think we would all like to have it continue. But I think the business community is going to have to work hard to continue to convince local government leaders that this cooperation should be a new norm. But I think, to be honest, we also have to expect that many of the old divisions will tend to resurface. I mean, we're going to have disagreements on taxation and privacy issues, but hopefully those are things we can work through and come up with solutions. I think at this point we really don't know, but it has provided the opportunity to both government to show some of their best side and business to show their best side.
Yeah, it is really a unique time, and it's great seeing that type of collaborative spirit and collaborative work happening. So you've been a longtime Seattleite. You've watched this city evolve over a number of years. You've served on boards, on nonprofits, and what we're seeing right now is really that this pandemic seems to be threatening the livelihoods of small business owners and service workers, many of whom were already economically unstable. What do you think the impact will be to cities like San Francisco and Seattle as this portion of the workforce gets hit by the economic downturn?
Yes, well, I mean, this crisis is unprecedented in its severity. It's not just an economic crisis, obviously, but it's a healthcare one. And so it's going to take really a while to come out of both of those. And I do think, I don't know about San Francisco, but it may be similar. I think Seattle's probably going to recover economically better than most cities because of its strong tech-based economy. But nonetheless, we shouldn't use that to minimize the seriousness to the unemployed. And in the short term, we need to continue relief efforts and got to work hard to get businesses reopened. And then longer term, I think we're going to need to, this is kind of an opportunity to maybe help improve education for younger people and to retrain workers. Now, that's been a hope for a lot of us for a long time. And it's been hard to realize, but maybe a renewed effort on that could succeed.
And how have you and other tech leaders been addressing some of these immediate community needs that have been surfacing?
Yeah, well, a lot has been going on. Both businesses themselves and tech leaders have really pitched in. Amazon and Microsoft, for example, they've got dozens of initiatives. Amazon contributed thousands of laptops to students in the Seattle Public Schools. Nick, our sea.citi group, has launched a program to provide remote technical help to those students so they can actually make them work and get online. Amazon created a $10 million fund for grants and rent forgiveness to the restaurants and businesses around them. I mean, I could go through a long list, but I want to mention one special effort that happened here in Seattle, and it's actually called All in Seattle. And this was a group of business individuals, primarily tech people. And the groups came together on a Tuesday for the first time. And by Sunday, it had raised over $27 million from business leaders, not from companies, but from business leaders, to donate to people in need, food banks, grants to small businesses, rent relief programs. And it was really started by a wonderful tech entrepreneur up here, Raj Singh. Raj had founded Concur in the mid-90s, which was a travel expense site. He and his brother, Steve Singh, sold it to SAP for $8 billion. But really it was Raj calling, a handful of friends, and then that handful of friends called more friends. And so it was really an amazing effort focused on how do we get money immediately to people in need. So I don't know if it's a model for others, but it helps show that this idea that tech leaders sit on their hands with respect to those in need really proved that wrong.
And all that money ended up at Seattle-based organizations, correct?
Yes, it was really a local mean, Seattle's in the forefront of, the Gates Foundation giving money all over the world, but it went to specific food banks and existing programs. We didn't create a new organization. We didn't create new funding sources. We got people to give directly to existing, to 20 or so existing nonprofits primarily.
That's great. Well, our time is just about wrapped up. I really want to thank you for coming out this evening and chatting with us. It was great to talk to you. And with that, we'll just pass it right back over to Jen.
Okay, thank you.
I was muted. I've been on Zoom like 300,000 times in the last month, and I still forget to mute myself every time. Hi, my name is David Pierce. I'm the editor at large at Protocol, and we have an awesome panel today, and they're all about to introduce themselves. But before we do that, just real quick housekeeping. This is the time to put all of your questions into the Q&A. We have a bunch of time for us to talk, and then we have a bunch of time for audience questions, and I'm happy to ask the like 9,000 questions I have for our awesome panelists here. But if you have questions, please let them know. So let's just, rather than have me introduce you guys, let's just have you do it, and you're gonna do it in the order I see you on Zoom. So Tom, you go first.
Thanks, David. Hi, I'm Tom Tarantino. One of my jobs at Twitter is I lead our state and city public policy, but I also lead our global crisis response program. And I've been doing this for about 6 years and happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, Allie, you're up next.
Hey, my name is Allie Rail. I'm the VP of Customer Experience at Slack.
Awesome. Vikram.
My name is Vikram Iyer. I'm the VP of Public Policy and Strategic Comms at Postmates.
Awesome. Again, thank you all for being here. We have lots of fun stuff to get into. And I just want to say, this is the time that, like, for all the things you normally catch yourself saying, like, oh, that's too boring, nobody wants to hear about that. Like, this is the time I want to get like super deep in the weeds of like what life is like right now. But I think maybe the easiest place to start is just kind of, I want to know what work is like for you guys right now. I feel like we had this interesting time in March that was just like pure chaos. And then April was kind of figure out what life looks like now. And it seems like from talking to some folks that there is a little bit of a sense of things settling into whatever the new normal is going to be for however long. And Allie, let's maybe start with you, because I feel like if there's ever going to be a company that could just sort of snap its fingers and immediately start working from home, it ought to be Slack, right? So like, what does work life look like right now, and how's it different?
I think your summary was really accurate. Like, March was just a whole bunch of like, wow, what's going on? April started to settle out, and there are two parts to that. One is, of course, just the dynamics of actually moving home, like having people change where they worked and not having the offices, and changing Zoom. Like, there's a whole bunch of logistics involved in having 2,000 plus people work from home. But then there was like the business change. And our business changed a lot as soon as lockdown started going into place. And we saw the wave of growth in business geographically matching the wave of lockdowns in countries due to the coronavirus. So like, we saw Italy tip over before we saw the US tip over. We saw Japan come in later. So it's been like, the business dynamics were interesting. So it was kind of a combination of getting ourselves ready to do what we do at home, while getting our platform ready to do more than it had ever done simultaneously every day, more than the prior day. And we just saw bigger and bigger days. Every day was a record and a record and a record. It was a really cool and invigorating time at the company. It definitely wasn't cause for celebration. We're not looking at all the charts going up and to the right and being like, yes. It was just like, it was really galvanizing. It was a moment where we all kind of took stock of what was going on and said, like, okay, we can contribute here. We can help. We are part of what is helping people get through this. We're part of keeping people connected to their workplaces, part of keeping businesses going. Like, we have an extra duty of responsibility here to all of our customers and all the people who are looking to us to see if we can help. So it's galvanizing. Stuart mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago on Twitter, like one of the most productive times ever in the company is what we just went through. Is pretty inspiring, honestly.
Does it feel like either side of that? And I'm curious, sort of from all your perspectives, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here, but I am curious, like, does it feel like that feeling of sort of new things and new experiences and new people coming all the time, does it feel like that is leveling off at all? Like, does it feel like the sort of every day is a brand new experience for what the company is? Is that starting to slow down, or is it still happening?
Within Slack, like we're seeing all of our employees really start to settle into what life is like now. People have figured out their childcare and homeschooling schedules, for example. They now have the chunk of time blocked off from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. for homeschooling. And teams have figured out their new routines and their new systems for connecting, going through processes, making sure it gets done, stand-ups, whatever it is. So we've definitely seen kind of a reversion to normalcy inside the company itself.
Got it. Okay, cool. And Tom, I'm curious from your perspective too, but the first thing I want to know is that an avocado pillow behind you?
That is, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we've been balanced. My wife and I have both been working from home, incredibly lucky to be able to both be working from home. She's a family physician, so she's virtually seeing patients in the kitchen, and I'm here, and we're bouncing our 18-month-old back and forth.
Nice. Okay.
As required. So behind me, you can't really see it. There's kind of a playroom set up. So that she can amuse herself if I have to be on a call or something like that.
That's awesome. So what about for you and Twitter? I mean, I know Twitter's been thinking for years now about kind of what life looks like after everybody's in an office together, but obviously a lot of things got rushed really, really, really quickly all at once. Like, does it feel like things have settled for you guys? Like, what's sort of different about working at Twitter now?
Yeah, I can't say that we were really expecting or preparing for this, but we have been talking a lot about not having jobs tied to a particular location. This really wasn't about more working from home, but having the flexibility to hire people wherever they wish to work, whether that's whether they want to run HR from DC, or they want to be a programmer in Idaho, or they want to work from the LA office. Having that flexibility just solves a lot of problems in terms of talent and mobility and the ability of the company to be more flexible. This sort of put a little gasoline on that movement, where we went from having like 150 permanent work from home people to 4,500 permanent work from home people. And so, I think it's been a bit of a journey. We started recommended work from home, I think in late February. So we kind of started this pretty early. And then we did mandatory work from home with the exception of some of our infrastructure people in March. And, for us, it's really just been about like protecting our employees and protecting the communities that we work in. And it's been interesting because, like Ali said, the tooling you have to use to do your daily job changes. Your routine very much changes. I think for someone on the public policy team, I feel that we have kind of the cheat codes because our team is globally distributed, and it's very rare that there's more than one person in an office. So we're kind of used to this. But I think there's been some challenges, especially around teams that have 10, 15 people in a building, whether it's a large office like San Francisco or a small one like DC. And I think the loss of that community has been tough. It was definitely really tough at first. I think now that we're all finding ways to connect, whether it's through Hangouts or through Slack, we've been working through that. We've gone through a lot of our global team meetings. We're still keeping up that cadence. Jack is occasionally going on and starting story time where he's reading to people's kids. We're trying to do fun things like that so that we all can recreate the sort of fun of working at a tech company, but doing it from your living room.
Yes. Vikram, what about you? I feel like if I was going to guess who of the four of us on this Zoom would have the hardest time sort of shifting work to home, it would be Postmates. Am I right in that thinking?
Yes, and it's interesting. I think everyone's challenged in their own right, like the others feeling really lucky to be able to have this environment of working from home. And I'll sort of bifurcate my answer from the kind of internal response as an employee of the company and the external response, as Tom said, in terms of the policy work that we do. As folks may know, we're a distributed network. So we're a tech company, but our product exists in the analog world. And so in the anatomy of our response, kind of putting aside the extraordinary work that our people team and our HR team has been doing to make sure that our employees are set up for success from their home offices, has actually looked a little different and pretty intense. In the first week or so, I would say, before shelter in place rules went into effect, we ended up trying to think proactively, like what could we provide more for our gig economy workforce, the Postmates couriers themselves that make deliveries. And we started out by creating a fleet relief fund, making sure that we would cover proactively the costs of PPE, or if you had a nervous cough, if you want to get that checked out, if you do have healthcare, or if you don't and you want an urgent care visit, that we would cover that at the front end. We also worked pretty closely with the Golden Gate Restaurant Association, as well as restaurants here in San Francisco, to actually waive all commission fees for any new entrants to the platform. If you were, a hardware store owner, or you were a bookstore and you were new to on-demand delivery, being able to offer those benefits. So that was sort of week one, which we're kind of on a proactive footing. The anatomy of our response has been pure bananas ever since. And I think weeks 2 to 3 were really cool because at about 48 states, now perhaps all, we received essential worker status in terms of being able to perform services on the platform. It's both a hell of a business opportunity, obviously, but I think a very serious undertaking that we think that if we're able to support businesses for pickup and carry out right now, that we got to do that right. And so that also opened up our opportunities to not just serve new constituents. We saw probably an 8x increase in businesses signing up on the platform, and an 84% spike in the number of Postmates, the couriers working on the platform, which against the jobless claims of 33 million in this country, is pretty telling in terms of having a low barrier of entry to work, to hop on a platform to then earn money. And we were able to work with, big chefs like Jose Andres, submit bids for cities like New York or Stockton, California, to be able to use our platform to deliver to homebound seniors, students, other vulnerable populations. But then I would say weeks 3, 5, and then more currently, really invited a tidal wave of regulatory conversations. Frontline workers, how should PPE be covered? The CDC changed their tune in terms of mask guidance. Should healthcare workers have the masks, or should all workers outside have the masks? Making sure that as more and more workers were maybe out there, do we have a sick leave policy and offering like 2 weeks of income replacement if that needed to happen? Working with Congress to create unemployment assistance for gig economy workers, working with city and state governments on other policies. So I'd say that for us, it's created perhaps like an overdrive level of engagement for our policy team, but having a huge opportunity to serve the community along the way. I will just add that I guess maybe the only person that didn't make a difference for was my mother, who, despite all of us being busy, texted me one day and said, "What are you doing with your spare time? Maybe you should, use it productively and write a book." So some things don't change, even though the other parts of the world do.
Yeah, that's nice. That's makes something is normal, which makes everything feel a little bit better. But I'm curious from your perspective, and this is sort of a question for all of you, but Vikram first. I think like you're in this really interesting position of, like you said, with the CDC and the mask guidance, of the things that we think we know are changing constantly. And you're in a position of, I mean, obviously, like Postmates is literally like life and death. It's this very high stakes thing for a lot of people who need a lot of things. Like this stuff matters in a different way that I think to a lot of people all of a sudden, and trying to figure out how to take care of couriers and employees and customers. And it's like like you said with the CDC, like the guidance changes, it seems like every hour as we learn new things. Like, is there more you can do than just try to move quickly based on whatever we know? Like, how do you set up to try and keep up with all this?
Yeah, I think first it requires teams to just be cross-functional and nimble, right? So the moment that we have guidance that's different from the CDC, but also has a unique tint to it in Boise versus San Francisco versus Los Angeles, it means that we want to be able to work with our product team to ship that information and those education campaigns inside the app to the couriers. It also means that we need to kind of look around the corner and specifically talk to our workers and elevate the voice of the gig worker in this conversation. I think that there's a lot of debate around the gig economy, kind of politically and from a policy perspective. But if you actually check in with workers and ask, what do they need right now? You start to be able to work backwards from how do you maybe either not preempt what the CDC will say, but maybe take stock of what, those constituents on the minds of lawmakers may eventually try and legislate or regulate. So an example might be that the distribution of those masks and covering PPE, I mentioned in week 1, we were offering reimbursements for anyone that wanted to purchase it before, the wave of sheltering laws went into effect. But then when the CDC shifted its guidance, we then go and look at how can we purchase this? How can we work with state governments to purchase and not compete against them? And how do we distribute it? Or similarly, we talked to a lot of workers that were new to the platform. I mentioned an 84% jump. And there's this false choice that people feel that they have to make in terms of, well, I need to go out and earn, but I also need to stay at home and take care of my kid whose school is closed or a family member. So we were the first to actually unveil a family care relief bonus for folks that want to use a childcare offset, that we could provide that for them. Or we similarly found out that a lot of workers on our platform were nervous about employability on the other side of COVID. So we started rolling out a series of online career development and vocational certification programs. So I think asking workers what they need is a good proxy for where the lawmakers are probably going to start regulating. But I'm not going to lie, it is a fair bit of offensive posturing as well as just playing reactive defense to a lot of the changes.
Okay, fair enough. And Tom and Ali, what about you guys? I mean, I imagine, whether it's onboarding new people who are trying to use your services or trying to, figure out what to do with employees and staff, you're going through all this stuff at lightning speed too. How do you keep up?
So I'll say the advantage of being a global company is that we got to see a lot of this stuff early in different markets. And so, as government agencies and international agencies sort of lag behind in guidance, we can kind of take cues from where some of our colleagues have been before, and try to develop policies and procedures to head off what's coming next. And so, and I think part of that is just deepening our relationships with public health officials, with international organizations, and then trying to figure out what is the thing that we need to figure out? What are the things that we need to do, not just to protect our workforce, but also how do we leverage the platform to make sure that public health information and the right public health information is getting out to our customers.
For us, we really poured all of our energy into our customers and how we could help them. All of you who use Slack recently got a fresh new UI for Slack on your desktops. That's something that we had in the works for months. We'd done a lot of research on it. Our research told us it was good. It told us that new users new to the platform could understand it more quickly, start using it more effectively, and seasoned, tenured users could also find more functionality that had always been there, but that we'd hidden. And we had a rollout plan that coincided with the beginning of this. So we had to have a moment. We're like, all right, do we want to change the UI of the tool that a whole bunch of people are going to be using exclusively to work from home right now? Or do we keep it as it is? And if we're going to roll it out, how do we roll it out? And if you're a software company, you know how you do this stuff. You do an A/B test and you want to see let's do 50% of new users and let's see if they make channels faster, send more messages. You want to see how things are going. But we had this moment where it's we did a ton of research ourselves. We know it's better. We don't need to get more data to prove to ourselves that it's better. So let's just go all out. Let's get this to every new user as fast as we possibly can, because we know that it's going to help them use our product more effectively. And then let's be really careful about getting it to everybody else. Let's make sure that we are giving it to them in a way at a time that doesn't totally disrupt their work, and that we've given them enough, in-product training to be this thing that you need, it moved over here. And, by and large, I think we really succeeded. I'm happy with the decisions that we made. And that has gone over extremely well. And then, another thing that we realized, we've always known it, but our product can be hard to understand at first, because we're asking you to come up to understand some abstractions, like what's a workspace, what's a channel, who am I in this universe, what's a DM? So oftentimes we can get people through these hurdles by talking to them. And one thing that Stuart, our CEO, likes to say is that, like, if I could just sit down with every single person trying our product, I could get half of them using it just by talking with them for 20 minutes. So we extended that philosophy and we said, cool, let's just talk to anybody who wants to talk to us for 20 minutes and let's see if we can get them on board. So we did, we ran this program for about a month and a half. We did over 1,000 20-minute consults with people, literally anybody who just wanted to sign up. And you might have talked to somebody from my team, like the support organization. Our CFO did some. Like our VP of people did some. So anybody who wanted to talk to us was likely to get really anybody from any part of the country on the other end of the line. And those were, really effective and successful. And it's like, that's one of those programs that we're going to continue to do just because it worked. And it was something we had in mind for a while, but we just hadn't pulled the trigger. But it was just, again, kind of like the UI, the moment made it really clear, like, this is the time to do this. Like, stop waiting, stop dithering, just get it together and get it out the door. It's not going to be perfect. You're not going to be in love with it, but get the program out the door. And like, super glad we had that opportunity to do it. And then finally, we had also been, pretty aggressively thinking about how we make our product more approachable the first time you get into it. So like, you've signed up for Slack, now what? And we were able to take a lot of what we learned from those consults and a lot of research that we had already done and put out some really drastic, like dramatic reimaginings of the onboarding experience. And those are now out to, if not 100%, some large percentage, and we're going to continue to iterate on that. So really everything that we have done is we've just been trying to reach out to the customer base to figure out how can we help them with this kind of amorphous, kind of abstract product where it's like, you communicate about your stuff, whatever it is, in channels. There's a lot of, we all communicate differently within our businesses about a lot of different things. And it's hard for us as Slack to be like, you talk about this project in these channels in this way with these people. It's just something that we can't know. So trying to figure out how to help people bridge those gaps between what they need out of our product and how to get it out of our product has really been our focus.
I'm not going to lie, I was a Slack skeptic for a while, and then COVID set. Now I'm a believer.
What's that?
I said I'm not
thank you.
I was a skeptic at first, but I'm now a true believer. So well done. Well played.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, totally. I was literally that curmudgeon who was like, I don't know what the hell this thing is. Just G-chat me. And then now I could not live without it.
We are truly just very happy to serve, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
I had somebody tell me a few weeks ago that now is actually the perfect time to totally overhaul your product because everyone's life is so chaotic that, like, what's one more new thing? I'm not sure I buy this theory, but they were like very adamant that, like, if you've ever been debating pivoting completely what you're doing to something else, now is the moment. So like, we'll see. But I'm curious, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, Ali, but especially as for all of you thinking about new users, and you've all had an influx of them. And I'm guessing partly because it's just sort of a numbers thing, but also because of the moment that we're in, they're going to be different people than the people who have maybe been using your platforms before. And you're in the position of having to sort of newly take care of the people who are already on your platform while also figuring out how to help the people who are new and how your sort of role in the world has changed. And like, has it been totally different? Like, do any of you have sort of a different perception of what your platform is for because of what's happened and all these new people who are on it?
I can start. No, but in a really gratifying way now. It was, we always wanted to make something that was just kind of a flexible way for teams of people to communicate to get their work done. And one of the amazing things here is that, yes, we did see a lot of, we saw a lot of people who are new to the platform, new to the concept. But once we had this conversation with them, once we helped them out, the product was equally as applicable to them as it has been to all the customers in the past. The difference here was not in the use cases, it was in the fear. So usually people come to Slack and they're like, I heard about it and like, maybe it would be cool. I could like communicate with it. And like, there's some curiosity, there's a little bit of like inquisition, but there's not like a need. And what we saw, especially at the beginning of this, was just abject fear. Like, I need to talk to my coworkers to keep my business running, or we will no longer be solvent. I think you guys can solve my problem. Please help me. And so it's just the fear and the fact that it, kind of, we got kind of a free pass through that consideration phase where people are like, Slack, I don't know, I should research it. People just like skipped right over that. They're like, Slack, I've heard about it. I'm making an account, help me. And we saw those people get from the just trying it out to being successful with it phases really, really quickly. And we also saw tenured users who weren't using it for much in the past, maybe just DMs, maybe some fun gifts. We also saw their usage leapfrog into like very sophisticated, successful usage as well, because suddenly those teams, they were already familiar with the product, but they also had a need for all the productivity features that it offers.
Yeah, I would add to that that for Postmates, our world and our customer base changed and probably along 3 lines. I mean, I was speaking to this a little bit earlier, but we've been able to open up the platform in really, really interesting ways where hospitals are now a customer of ours if we're trying to make sure that nurses get meals in between shifts, or senior care homes in which there are denser populations of homebound seniors, and making sure that we can connect with organizations or connect directly with those end customers as new constituents of ours, students, the homeless, and expanding work in terms of making sure people are fed. And I think that's important, not just in terms of like a look how cool we are, look at these interesting populations we're serving, but I think that if you take the population as sort of one detail of what's new, and then you move to a second point, which is that now you have more users that maybe aren't vulnerable populations, but are still using it as a lifestyle brand. For example, we onboarded about 7,000 or so Walgreens to make sure that people can order thermometers if they want, toilet paper if they want, health and wellness products if they want. I think it shifts the lifestyle notion from Postmates as just the way that someone cures a hangover on a lazy Sunday with a burger delivered to their house, to a whole variety of items that they can order. And then that leads to kind of a final realization, and Ali used this term, but it sort of leapfrogs customer behavior, maybe 2 years out from where we assumed this world would go anyway, in terms of customer demand is changing to on demand. And there are these flexible workforces that are growing, and there's a whole conversation you can have about that. But more and more local businesses, Main Street retailers, realizing that this is a means that not only to survive right now, but also to compete against big box retailers in the e-commerce domain. That sort of creates not only new user segments and new use cases, but also sort of like a new frontier in the way that people adopt this in their daily lives. And I think that's been both very challenging, but also quite interesting to observe, at least from our perch.
I'd say, Twitter has always been a go-to destination during crisis, right? Like the entire platform is about real-time information. And so during a crisis, people tend to flock to Twitter, and we see our usage increase because people are looking for official sources of information. They're looking for their friends. They're looking for, all the stuff that the information they need to get to safety. On a normal day, we want customers to come to Twitter and stay on Twitter, right? Hang out, look at what's trending, look at, kittens and Kardashians and whatever the heck it is people do on the internet these days. But during a crisis, that flips, right? We want people to be able to come to the platform, get the information they need as fast as possible, and then get to safety. Well, with COVID, it's been introducing a third way, right? Because now people still have that need to get real-time important public health information, and they should be able to get it quickly, but they're also at home. And there's like there's these needs that are surfacing that we hadn't really thought too much of before, where there's the information, the action need, right? What information do I need to tell me what to do, to give me something to do that's positive to help myself, my family, whatever. The informational needs, what are the news sources and official sources of information that I need to know what's happening around me in terms of not just the pandemic, but also my community. And then the third need is what information do I need to make me feel a little better, right? It's not just all terrible things all the time. And so what we found is that, as we've seen our usage, climb astronomically in the last couple of months, how are we best servicing those needs so that our customers that are coming to Twitter for these wide variety of things are able to get it. They're able to find it easily, and then they're able to do what they need to do to keep them safe.
Interesting, especially, and I feel like all three of you are dealing with this to some extent a little bit, where sort of all those things are there's tension there, right? Whether it's like people want wildly different things from Twitter all at the same time, or people are coming to Slack and they're like, I need to figure this out now, but it's actually like sort of complicated and it takes 20 minutes. And it's like trying to be sort of fast and slow all at the same time seems like a strange and sort of unique thing to this moment where like you don't want to be wrong, but you also don't want to be behind.
One thing that I find really interesting, particularly just given the coverage that Protocol has done of companies and tech companies during this response, is that it reminds me a lot of public utilities like electricity companies. They popped out in the scene and it was interesting in terms of the service that they could offer. And then almost overnight, they were ubiquitous and many people relied on them. And then there was massive government and rightly concern around how are you regulating this? How are you creating rules around this? I think, for the past few years, companies like ours, as well as Uber and Lyft and our kind of brethren in the on-demand space, have been seeing different types of rules, legislation, and regulations. But almost instantly, when you see that you have these essential services, and you can debate the word frontline worker, but you have these essential services that are out there providing lifelines and providing support for workers, for businesses, for our neighbors. But then you also see this intense response from lawmakers, city, state, and federal, to want to make sure that there are kind of rules around that. It also forces tech companies to ask a very serious question. How can you both open up your platforms in these very unique ways, disseminate appropriate information, help support different types of organizations in your home communities, while also feeling a little waylaid by all these inbound legislative regulations that are coming in? And do you have a responsibility to pause, rewrite your code and divine a new algorithm based off of what city council member in Dallas or in Seattle wants? Or should you be able to continue to provide your service unabated during this period of performing critical infrastructure? And I think that's also a very kind of a tech policy intersection conversation to be had, because otherwise you could see smaller actors that are performing a key service easily kind of get trounced by well-intentioned public policy. But when you think about the compliance standard of the public policy, it may not actually fit the business model. And that's a very real tension that we're facing right now.
Somewhere a lot of Zoom employees are nodding vigorously listening to you say that right now. So let's get to a few audience questions. There are some good ones in here. And again, if anyone on here has other questions you want us to get to, we can do that. So I'm going to do these sort of out of order, but the first one is from Miles, and it says, what have you learned from using your own products as part of your pandemic response? How has your use of your own products changed? And I suspect there's an interesting answer for all three of you. So whoever wants to go first, go first.
I mean, I'll just say, one of the things that we have mobilized around the company is combating misinformation on Twitter, right? And that is, we have built deep relationships with not just government health ministries, but international organizations and, academic institutions, so that, us as Twitter employees, but also us as customers using Twitter during this pandemic, are getting consistent information out there. I think, we have all, I know my team has definitely spent a lot more time in our various DM threads than we have before, but we're also using our product to get the same information that we're trying to elevate for our customers, because we're all in the same situation. We're not responding to an earthquake in Mexico City or a wildfire in Northern California. Like, we're all participating in the crisis as it's happening and as we're trying to build our product. And so I think one of the things it's done is it's really amplified a lot of how our product development processes and how a lot of our policies around content and a lot of the speed in which we react to that stuff. It's really changed it quite a bit. And it's really brought to light, some of the strengths that we have internally as a company in terms of process and some of the places we're kind of weak. And I think, I think coming out of this, we're going to have a much more rigorous, much more so than before, rigorous internal process in terms of how to, how to service the platform, and everything from our infrastructure team, which is, working like crazy trying to keep the service alive, to our product and trust and safety teams, which are, working to try to make sure that the right official information is being elevated on the platform and the bad information is not as visible.
For our part, I don't know, people often don't believe this, but like we don't send email at Slack. Like we don't email within the company, and it's not a dogmatic thing, and it's not like you'll get in trouble if you send an email. It's not something that makes sense. So official communications come through Slack, just like every other communication at our company. We've seen, so those of you who are familiar with the platform probably have some thoughts about a feature called @channel. It is a way to notify everybody in a channel. Like you generate a notification, it goes to their phone. We do not use this feature very much because it can be very annoying. But when it's really important to communicate to people, for example, I needed to tell my team, I needed to make sure that everybody knew the day that we closed the office, like, do not go into the office. I have a global team. They're spread out across 7 different offices in 5 different countries. The only way for me to make sure that folks in, for example, Ireland see a message before they get into the office is for me to push it to their phone. So making sure that we are, communicating, that we are, using our tool well to send out these important communications, making sure that we are using the nuances of the tool to get things to people in a timely fashion. And again, back to the no email thing, like Slack is a system of record. When you are in person, when you're having hallway meetings, it can be kind of easy for information to kind of leak, not get captured. But right now, it's so important for everything to get captured in a channel. So it's like you have a conversation, it's in a channel by default. So there's just been a lot of just making sure that information is there and transparent and easy for everyone to find, since we can't sit in a room and hash it out right now.
Vikram, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Tom said about trust and safety teams. I think that for those of us that where our teams are more nascent, or for those of us who work at companies that have them at scale, or for those of us who don't know them or have them at all, I think they're really, really unsung heroes of a lot of the company processes, particularly if you're dealing with engagement with the real world, so to speak. But for us as a company, I think that managing teams remotely is supported by tools like Slack, or even tools like the one we're on right now. But I think to do public policy work and government relations work, where your only life skill really is to talk for a living and leverage those relationships in ways that guard the unit economics of a company, it can be really challenging to have a policy team that's stationary or on calls like this all day, every day. And so I think one of the best process improvements we ought to make, and I won't say that we're the gold standard of it, but we continually should make as employers, are mental health resources for the company. And I think that means everything from encouraging downtime to recovery time to wanting to talk it out with a peer or outside professional. And I think that's a main takeaway for me, because certainly having a policy team that is working around the clock, dealing with a lot of these new opportunities with cities, but also a lot of these new regulations, this is our time to shine. This is what we do. This is our work, but it is also very demanding. And I think unless you create process space for that, it could easily result in, burnout and other types of conversation that I know that sf.citi has facilitated in the past, but I think it's even more punctuated at this moment in time.
Got it. Okay. So next audience question from Tara Ryan. I think that's probably how you pronounce it. How have you changed the way you approach hiring? And I'm particularly curious, like hiring, recruiting, onboarding, like all of that seems to be totally different now.
I can start with this one. So it's so we have an onboarding program, everybody does. People starting at Slack fly to San Francisco for a week, and we take them through onboarding, and there's 2 days of company onboarding, and they have department onboarding, and there are lunches, like there's a whole thing. that we had to figure out like which pieces of these do we take remote and how do we do it next week. So we changed to, for example, we ship laptops to everybody before their first day. There is, just due to the nature of our business, due to the sensitivity of data that we store, people can't touch anything, like they can't touch our company Slack instance until we get them through security. So it's like, how do we get somebody through our security training with a laptop that can't log into Slack properties until they get through security training? So, we had some of these chicken and egg things to figure out here. The feedback that we've gotten from onboarding so far is that it's going quite well. People are, they're like, this would be more ideal in person, but it's great, especially given our situation. In terms of hiring, like more Zoom hiring, the process hasn't changed that much, but we have really put our foot down on the gas. So we opened up a lot more positions, slack.com/careers. So we're hiring much more quickly and, getting people through much faster, or getting more people through quickly is really the only changes that we've seen.
Yeah, I'll echo everything Ali said. It's at first we had to take a bit of a pause just to figure out what the virtual onboarding process looked like, and the stuff that like the presentations on Twitter's history and why everything's named after a bird and yada yada. That's like easy, right? That's just streaming. But the laptop stuff, the security stuff, especially since if you're on a team that's usually quite distributed, be making sure that people are introduced and check in regularly and make sure that managers are able to get their arms around new employees and figure out how to best support them so that they can do the work they're supposed to be doing. I'll say on my team, just in the last 2 weeks, we have our new global vice president of public policy and vice president for the Americas just started, and they started completely virtually, and it's been a trip. But it actually works a lot better than I think anyone thought it was going to work. So I think we're still hiring, and we're just going to keep moving forward until we have to go back to normal, whatever that looks like.
Vikram, same thing.
Yeah, not a lot of novelty to add there, but to anyone that's interested, Postmates is hiring. It is a strange process, but I think for anyone that has run into a hiring process virtually so far, it's always helpful to ask maybe the recruiters up front, how they're working through their hiring timelines, because I know that has shifted even for public postings for different job descriptions for different companies. So I would just recommend that at the front end when you're talking to your recruiter. But for Postmates across business operations, sales, and a variety of other needs, I would check us out.
Do you guys think any of those pieces of the process that are changing will stick? I mean, big or small, like are we going to come out of this and everything about sort of hiring and onboarding goes back to normal? Or are there pieces of this that feel like maybe they're working and are going to keep working going forward?
I think Ali, you really laid out a pretty robust operation there at the front end. I'm really proud of our people team for managing all of this in this new environment. I think that we're going to continue to fine tune it. But one thing that is very clear to us is that, normally when you think about an interview loop, you think about kind of a battery of folks that you would interact with that would weigh in on the culture fit, the aptitude, the substantive fit. But now that we are a team where there's so many cross-functional touches, I think the beauty of some of the kind of virtual engagements on the interview process, at least that might stick, is being able to meet a wider cast of folks at the company that you may touch or interact with, and doing the onboarding. I think similarly to what Ali said, doing departmental specific onboarding to get read in to what the mandate is of different teams, even if you don't work with them day to day. I think that's going to be really, really important. And if we didn't have it before, I think that certainly will stick. Whether that remains a digital engagement or an analog engagement, I think remains to be seen, at least for us. But the virtue of it is quite clear now.
Yeah, one thing that this has really shown to me is that having an office and being in person, like, it is a luxury, and like I will be disappointed if all the optimizations that we've had to make and all the changes that we had to make in the absence of that luxury, if none of them turn out to be things that should persist, because surely some good has come out of this. Things have had to become leaner. So like, it sucks that we don't get to have lunches with our new hires. That should come back. But surely there is some other stuff that's like, yeah, that wasn't providing us much benefit. And we can see that now that we haven't done it for 3 months. So let's not bring it back. Like it's, there have, you know, you never waste a crisis. There have been so many kind of good opportunities on the margins to realize that there are better ways to do things. And, you know, I just go back to like, let's make our product better for new people getting on board. We knew that this was a problem. And it took this to kind of push us into it. And same thing goes for a lot of business operations.
Tom, any thoughts?
I mean, I don't have a lot to add to Vikram or Ali, just to say that, like, you know, and I'm hesitate to speak for our great people team who's just done an amazing job. But I imagine that the creativity that we've had to go through to, you know, to compensate for the fact that everyone's working at home right now, I think that's allowed us to be a little bit more innovative and it's allowed us to be a little faster. And I do think that we are gonna have some changes. I just don't know what they look like yet.
Yeah, one thing I've heard from a number of companies is that they've realized in the last several weeks how fast they're capable of moving, and how much that often turns out to be okay. That so many of the sort of gates put in front of things and the like slowness that felt useful and productive was actually not necessarily helping in a lot of things, and that there's a willingness to sort of push harder that might come out of this in a lot of places that I think is going to be really interesting. So, okay, couple more audience questions. This one is from Marguerite, who says, what are the panelists doing to make their technologies more user-friendly and accessible to public health individuals and organizations who tend to be behind the private sector in adopting new technologies? So I feel like the big question there is like, how do you help people who are suddenly having to grapple with a level of tech in a moment when they weren't necessarily, you know, primed to be able to do this? And I feel like all of you must be going through this constantly. Like digital transformation got sped way up in the last 2 months.
I mean, it's not really an infrastructure thing for us, but it's more of a, you know, the customer base and usage has changed, right? Like we have a lot of epidemiologists and virologists who are not doing a lot on Twitter, you know, 4 months ago that are now tweeting up a storm. And so part of that is working with universities to make sure that like they understand how to use the platform and leverage it. And then, you know, we've kind of taken our suspended verification program out of mothballs for public health officials so that, you know, if someone is claiming to be, you know, the head of virology for the University of Washington, then that's actually who they say they are. And so that we can amplify that real public health information. You know, I think we've also done a lot of platform integrations around government officials. I think we've done Q&As with 21 mayors, 14 governors, I think a dozen or more state attorneys general and the attorney general, as well as the WHO. And these are organizations and people who had not, you know, doing a moderated Twitter Q&A was pretty scary a few months ago, but now like it's kind of a necessary way to get you know, critical information out to the people they serve. And so, you know, our government partnerships team and the policy team has really kind of gone full speed in trying to make sure that the public health apparatus, both academic and government, are able to leverage the platform as much as possible.
Yeah, this might be an interesting tint to it. I mean, certainly in terms of newer users, a lot of you know, farmers market vendors, for example, people that have never utilized the platform in the past, just doing way more education. I think also these on-demand delivery apps provide different services, how to market your products, how to make sure that you're discovered in the app, you know, ahead of Taco Bell or McDonald's. And I think a lot of that basic education is required right now, and that continues as sort of an engagement exercise with our sales and merchant team. But I think one part of the question, at least if I heard it correctly, was also from a public health bend. This may not be totally responsive, but you know, we have heard allegations of increased trafficking by way of using on-demand delivery apps or using different services where people can hop on and make money, kind of to coerce people into earning for someone if they're already in a coerced position. There's not a lot of publicly conclusive data on it, but this is in my opinion, a public health risk and certainly a public policy challenge if there are people using these platforms in nefarious ways. So again, speaking back, giving shout outs to our trust and safety team, we've been working to monitor fraud and use large data sets on the platform specifically to share that out with anti-trafficking and domestic violence organizations, just to see if to query if there's any odd behavior that specific types of activity from a sales side, from merchants, from a delivery side might be able to illuminate. And I think that kind of figuring out new use cases to help the communities around you and in all different ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect a burrito delivery app to has really been kind of a bright star in the overall response process.
I talked a lot about all we've done for onboarding new customers and users, but Marguerite, you asked about public health individuals and organizations, and one thing about Slack is that there are a lot of health organizations that came to us to say, like, we need to use you right now, but we can't because we need HIPAA compliance. And we do have in our enterprise plan, we do have a way to unlock HIPAA compliance. Like but it is something that we only had at the enterprise level because generally it's only enterprise companies that need it. So we did quickly figure out a way to kind of get that to the smaller, the smaller entities that needed access to that. And any researcher, any health entity, like basically anybody working on the crisis could and can still contact us to say, like, I need the benefits of a paid plan for free. And we'll just turn on a 3-month trial, no questions asked. So those are a couple of the things that we've done specifically to reach out more to that community.
Got it. Okay. So we only have a couple minutes left. So let's do a little bit of looking ahead here. We have a question from Lisa who says, now that the chaos is gone and the tools are implemented, what are your top priorities to support your company and navigate more changes and uncertainty? Which I like as a frame for a question. It's like everything, the full crazy is over, and now we're on to sort of the next crazy. So it's like, what are you guys thinking about as we kind of move into the next crazy?
I mean, go ahead.
No, please. Sorry.
I mean, I'll just say, the first thing is, we have to make sure that our employees are safe and that, as we are changing our operations, whether we're going back into the office or not, or staying at home, that, our workforce is protected and that our workforce also is protecting the neighborhoods around them, whether it's their homes or the communities they work in. And so that is something that our corporate security team has done an amazing job globally in trying to figure that out. And so that's kind of the first stop on that, right? And then, trying to figure out, as we have altered the platform to make sure that, public health information is readily available, to make sure that people are, coming to the platform to get information about COVID. We've done a lot of things with curation, with events pages, with moments, with, timeline injections, with all these things to surface this information. And so now we're trying to figure, how long is that going to be the need for our customers, and how long do we keep these product changes implemented? And then what are the criteria we're going to use to go back to normal Twitter? Or is there going to be a normal Twitter? We just don't know that quite. We don't know the answer to that question yet. And so I think in terms of the workforce, we're increasing our, support for our employees. That's everything from, giving people an allowance to allow them to buy extra monitors and desks and stuff. I know prior to this, my home office was a janky IKEA table and my laptop. And so now I actually have a monitor and stuff. And then also making sure that everyone's mental health and physical health needs are met. And then I think one of the big things that's going to change permanently as we start making this normal is the flexibility, right? Like, you're not going necessarily from 9 to 5. right? People are gonna be on and offline at varying times as your work-life balance is no longer a balance, it's just your work life. And so I think that's something that's probably going to stick around for a long time, whether we all start going back to the office or we kind of mix that up a little bit.
As someone who's currently sitting at a janky IKEA table, I find that idea deeply offensive, but that's okay. Vikram, Ali, any thoughts?
I mean, not a lot to add to that. Very focused on like employee health, reminding everybody to take care of themselves. This is very hard. Like we're not doing remote work. We are working from home during a crisis. We have, similarly given people stipends to kind of kit out a home office. We just set up a series of schedules where you can sign up to come get personal effects from the office because we haven't let anybody in for 2 months. Circulating mental health resources that are available to people, trying to make it explicitly very okay to take advantage of them. A lot of, just honesty and transparency. We've shifted all of our company, like all hands. We've added more forums. We've added, so more forums, we're doing them more frequently, and we're doing fewer slides. So one thing that we're trying to do is just be authentic people talking to people, not talking as much about the business, but if we are, we're just talking about it with our mouths. And it's like, yeah, go to this channel. There's some slides in there, like go check it out. So yeah, going forward, it's like right now, it's really just about the human connection and keeping in mind that like we're people and it's hard to be a person right now and it's okay.
I like it. I think I speak for everyone when I say that fewer slides is one significant upside that could potentially come out of this.
That's right. Fewer slides, more IKEA.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say actually, but I think for us, particularly at this moment in time, our focus will be very much directed towards cities like Seattle and San Francisco, cities that recognize the value of platforms like this as essential services, but run the risk of potentially outlining regulations that could potentially squeeze the ability to continue to operate. And I know that's a theme that I've hit a few times over, but I think that's really, really important. And then the second piece of it is just making sure that we can encourage worker safety in this environment. I think the difference between you receiving a delivery pre-COVID versus now, there's a lot more in your headspace about how the food was maintained, who touched the food, how it was brought over, their well-being. That runs the gamut from everything from food safety rules to all the way to making sure that workers have, income replacements like a sick leave or the right kind of protections and a safety net that can govern them at this time. And so I think equal parts education to make sure that lawmakers aren't necessarily running afoul for these critical services, and equal parts investment that should be the onus which should be on these companies to make sure that we're doing right by all the customers we serve.
Got it. Awesome. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you all so much for being here. This was really great. It was really awesome to get to talk to all of you. I appreciate it. All right, take care, guys. And I think, Jen, I believe back to you.
Hello, world. I am back, and I am super excited to bring up our next panelist because you guys had so many jokes about IKEA, and we have the president and chief product officer of TaskRabbit here. Sarah Rose, welcome. How's it going?
It's good. Can you hear me? See me?
I can hear you. I can see you. That's an amazing rabbit in the background. I love it.
Thank you. Yes, I figured it would be much nicer to look at our logo than what's actually behind me in my house with 3 kids. So
awesome. Well, I'm glad we've got you. So I don't think we have to really cover what TaskRabbit does. I think you are I think we are pretty obvious. So let's get right into it. How has the pandemic affected TaskRabbit?
Yeah, so TaskRabbit, just real quick, make sure everybody's on the same page. We're a marketplace and we're connecting taskers with clients to help make their lives easier, to help them with all kinds of tasks, to make everyday life easier for everyday people. And through this pandemic, it was really important to us that we continue to provide a way for clients to get the help they need and for taskers to be able to generate meaningful income, during this time. And in doing that, our number one priority really has always been, and it's still more true than ever through this pandemic, the health and safety of our taskers and the health and safety of our clients. And so when COVID really started to hit and all the lockdowns, really, I remember the first one in Italy, in Western Europe, and it was, we knew at that moment, it was like, oh, this is coming and it's real, and we need to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to protect our community. We moved very quickly, actually, to things like contactless tasks and virtual tasks only. We had a tremendous amount of communication all over our website and our apps for both clients and taskers, letting them know, like, please look at local public health guidelines and regulations. Please make sure you're doing everything that you can to engage safely. We wanted, again, to keep our general marketplace open, in the countries that we operate, so that people can be connected to help. So we feel really good about what we've been able to do during this time. And there's, one big thing that we realized we could make a huge impact in our community. And we launched Tasks for Good. And Tasks for Good is a volunteer program, actually, where we are connecting taskers with people who are more drastically affected. We're all affected by this pandemic, obviously, but some are affected more than others. And we wanted to help those people who might be immunocompromised or elderly or confined to their homes, or the healthcare workers that are on the front lines every day. And all of these people, all of a sudden, life is that much harder for them. And so we created this volunteer program where our taskers could offer their skills and expertise at no charge to these people. And it has been so beautiful and heartwarming to see the ways in which our clients are working with our taskers, and our taskers have been able to help them. So the pandemic, certainly, like everyone else, has had a huge impact on our business and our direction, but we feel really good about the direction that we've been able to go and the impact that we've been able to make.
So I'm curious, TaskRabbit's in more than one continent, of course, and you guys are in cities all over. How has it looked differently from market to market?
Yeah, so TaskRabbit is currently in 6 countries. We have, we were based here in the United States, and this is where we were founded in 2008. By the way, during a recession, during similar times. And then we've expanded to the United Kingdom, Canada, France, Spain, and Germany. And in our European countries, our business, our category mix, so to speak, is much more focused on IKEA, actually, where you can get that wonderful desk that Zach mentioned just before. So in Europe, where we have a much bigger percent of our business is related to IKEA and furniture assembly specifically, we've been more impacted because of the stores being shut down for so long. In the United States, where we have a much, much bigger general marketplace where our clients can find a broad range of tasks and help and essential services, during this period, things have been much stronger in the United States. But in Europe, we have an amazing partner in IKEA. They've been beside us since 2017, and they've really been a wonderful partner in bringing us to these markets, and are more excited than ever, to help get through this pandemic. And then on the other side, help make the lives of our IKEA clients easier.
So I imagine that you have a ton of people that have never used a tasker before, suddenly using taskers. Have you noticed any changes or differences with the new people coming onto your platform, and how are you guys handling that?
Great question. So what we've seen during this time is that clients have really resonated with the diversity of help that they can find on TaskRabbit. And we've seen some beautiful cases, as I mentioned before. For example, there was a woman here in San Francisco, actually, and her mother was 98 years old in New York City and couldn't leave her apartment to get help. And this woman here in San Francisco hired a tasker for the first time to help bring groceries and other goods, like from the pharmacy, for example, that her mom needed in order to get through the day. And this tasker was able to do all of those things successfully. And we heard from this person in San Francisco, like how delighted and just relieved, like she was so grateful that she had a way to help her mom all the way across the country, stuck in her apartment on God knows what floor building in Manhattan, and really was terrified to go out. So, you know, she is someone, and she even said she's gone ahead and favorited that tasker and is going to go ahead and continue to use that tasker long after the pandemic is behind us.
Yeah, I must say my parents, my amazing boomer parents are learning all kinds of new apps and grocery delivery and things like that. It's a whole new world.
Absolutely. And that reminds me of one other thing that we're actually doing right now is we are testing more of a concierge type of service. And we're working with the United Way, a partner, to help us do that, because there are people just maybe like your parents who aren't quite as used to working with apps and sites, and basically need a little bit of extra help in order to figure out how to use the sharing economy effectively. But that's been, just a great source of opportunity in helping us help the community.
So I'm curious, and this is really kind of getting my wheels. I actually worked at United Way for many years. With an aging population that we have, how do you see kind of the future post-pandemic, how TaskRabbit and other types of sharing economy apps fit into that?
Yeah, so I think what we've seen in this pandemic is how important the sharing economy is on so many levels. So for example, the frontline workers and, the delivery, for example, workers are really being touted as household heroes. They are truly heroes that are, connecting people with these essential services. And we've always thought about our taskers in that way, that they are the magic that makes TaskRabbit happen. And so I think as people really recognize the importance of the sharing, really independent work and the sharing economy, I think that we need to advance the conversation around things like portable benefits, for example, so that they have access to benefits that are attached to them that they can take to whatever platform that they're working on. And it's not dependent on the employer, for example. So I think this is an important conversation, and I hope in that we can continue to have it as the importance of independent work is widespread and known in the United States. I would also say TaskRabbit has always optimized its platform and cared deeply about giving our taskers the ultimate flexibility and control. So TaskRabbit, for example, the taskers on our platform set their own rates. They control where they work, who they work for. They control the types of work that they will accept. And it's that kind of flexibility that I actually think is going to become even more important and paramount because of this pandemic. When you have people who've been laid off, or I think the latest stat, and I'm probably outdated already, but 30 million workers have applied for unemployment, for example, in the United States, and they're looking for ways to generate meaningful income. TaskRabbit can be an avenue for them. And of course, many of these people are home watching their kids. So it's not like they can go do a 9-to-5 typical job. So they need flexibility in their life, and a platform like TaskRabbit really enables that for them, so they can do all of those things.
I think what's really fascinating is, we've had this conversation about, contractors and employees for quite some time now. And we had Postmates on before this as well. And, seeing how independent contractors can be utilized so quickly and getting people back to work has been really fascinating. I wonder if, to leave off kind of the conversation for the future, how do you see this workforce and perhaps government partnerships or any sort of public-private partnerships? What do you see in the future and on the horizon?
Yeah, so I would love to take the momentum that we have in this conversation as a country and really even globally around, independent work and come up with a mechanism, as I said before, where we can provide more stability and security in terms of portable benefits that the tasker can take with them regardless of where they go and who they're working for right at that moment. So I do think that it's going to require a collaboration between companies like TaskRabbit and government to really make that happen. And we've been starting to engage in those conversations and work to make that a reality.
It's super wild how quick things are changing. Yes. Tell me, what is your most interesting task that you've seen happen in the pandemic?
Oh, good question. This one was interesting. So a tasker was hired to give a gift bag to a homeless person. Not like, there wasn't like this guy on the corner of some street. It was like, here's a gift bag, go find a homeless person and give it to this person. And the tasker thought for a minute, like, wait, I want to make sure I'm not giving this person something that I shouldn't be giving them, contraband, whatever else. So went and peered into the bag. It wasn't locked or anything, it was a basic open bag. And they looked in and there was like a laptop in there. There was money in there. There was like all of these things to help this person get through the crisis. It just blew them away. And that story came back to us and we were so touched by it. It was absolutely incredible. And it's that kind of, care and concern that we see in our taskers. And I just can't thank them enough. They're so incredible. And they're the real heroes in this. So very special to us.
Well, that is such an amazing way to end off this conversation. I'm going to ask you one last question that I love to throw out to people, especially during this time. When the shelter in place is lifted, what's the first place that you want to eat?
Wow. Anywhere in Hawaii?
Okay.
Yeah, doesn't even matter. Like a fish taco on the beach in Hawaii.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. Have a good rest of your evening. All right. And now, Aaron, I think you were poking out a little bit earlier. We're going to bring you up. Aaron Levy, CEO of Box. How's it going?
Hey, good. Happy to be here. How you doing?
We're doing pretty well. It's a sunny day, so we're glad that we were able to get so many people here. So, Aaron, I don't think you need too much in the way of introductions, but if you want to just tell us a little bit about Box and what you do.
Sure. So, Aaron Levy, CEO of Box. We have a startup that helps companies be able to share and access and collaborate around their files from anywhere. This has certainly been a very crazy experience for us, like I think so many other companies, but glad to be here.
Awesome. So let's just start. How has the pandemic affected your business?
Yeah, so there's sort of two dimensions to that. The first is obviously operationally and the health of our employees and the safety of our employees. That's been focus number one really since the beginning. We moved to remote work, very very soon after Twitter and a few other companies did in San Francisco. So we were definitely on the early end of that wave. We benefit from the fact that we're an all cloud company. We use Zoom and Slack and Okta and sort of these modern technologies to be able to get our work done. So immediately kind of shifted to remote work and we were able to do that in a fairly seamless way. And then we kind of kicked into gear really around our customers. So we have about 100,000 customers globally, and they use us to be able to help them manage their most important information and being able to access that data when employees are working remotely and making sure that they can continue to run their supply chains and be able to serve their customers was really job number one once we got the health and safety of our employees really in order. So that's the mode that we've been operating in. Our product was founded with the vision of being able to access data and files from anywhere. And we certainly never anticipated that a pandemic would be one of the drivers of that use case, but here we are.
So there's got to be a huge influx of folks that are joining Box, right? I mean, I would imagine immediately, much like Cloudflare and a lot of our folks earlier, people just immediately needed to go to the cloud.
Well, we're
the case?
because we've been at this for a while and 15 years of building the company, we're fortunate to have a pretty sizable customer base to start with. And so we've been able to work with about 70% of the Fortune 500 and again, around 100,000 companies globally. So it was more of a situation where our companies needed to be able to use Box more expansively within their organizations and be able to make sure that more of their employees could use the technology. And so that's been our focus. So job number one has just been make sure our customers are successful, make sure that their businesses remain resilient right now. And you know, it's been really surprising and in some ways exciting to see the amount of immediate transformation that so many businesses have been able to deliver. You have organizations in healthcare that are delivering new digital experiences for their patients. You have life sciences companies that are collaborating globally. You have government agencies that have been able to move to the cloud rapidly. And so this has been just a massive accelerant to more and more organizations moving to the cloud and moving to digital platforms. And you know, I think we're in the early innings of that, but it's pretty clear where things are headed from here.
So where do you see things going post pandemic? You know, once this is all over and potentially the offices are back filled up, do you think that we're going to continue on this trajectory?
I think there's a bunch of things about how we're working today and how the business community operates today that will be carried forward even when it's health and even when it's safe and healthy to be able to go into an office environment. And so things like reduced business travel and doing more virtual meetings and events, things like being able to digitally serve your customers so they can transact with you online without a lot of manual steps or processes, making sure that your infrastructure is built on top of resilient platforms in the cloud. I think there's a lot of things that you know are today being caused because of the health and social distancing policies that we've had, but will very quickly be discovered as actually better ways to run your business and be able to work, be able to serve your customers. And so I'm optimistic that as a result of this event, you know, there'll be many parts of the economy that continue to be very robust and that we'll get back to local restaurants and local businesses. At the same time, we'll probably be able to you know, reinvent some industries that frankly really have been needing to be reinvented for quite some time. So why can't we make sure healthcare is delivered to more people across the country and around the globe? How do you make sure that distance learning is more enabled for more populations? How do we reduce maybe business travel and be able to have the effect of being in multiple places at once so we can reach our customers and reach our employees much more easily? So I think there's a lot of things that will be benefits to how we work and how we stay productive in our personal lives. And I'm optimistic that that once we get back to where things are safe and again, you can kind of move around in a very healthy way, that you'll also see some positive impacts on the local economy as well.
You know, I did my first Zoom doctor's call yesterday. The new world of medicine, man, like that's exciting stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, think about it, like probably, I don't know the situation, but you know, probably you shaved 2 to 3 hours of other time from that experience, and you know, just waiting in hospitals, waiting in lines, you know, all of that's time back for us to be able to be with our family, to be able to do something maybe more interesting, and in many cases you have you know, what we've seen with in so many technology markets. When you make something more efficient, so in the case of Uber or Lyft, when you made taxis more efficient, more people ultimately consume those services. I think there's so many markets where, because of the friction and the hurdles for people to be able to participate in those markets, they just were actually way smaller and way fewer people would be able to get benefit from those. So again, if you think about, you know, why can't anybody get a top level education on demand completely virtually? Why can't you do things like telehealth? Why can't we you know, have mental health that is delivered to anybody wherever they are? So so I think when you start to remove distance and time and some of the physical limits, you can actually really create way better experiences for people and reach all new types of customers.
So what kind of infrastructure do you think we need to be working on now? We actually had a call with the mayor of Oakland earlier today, and you know, there's a literal device shortage. You know,
Yep.
The kids are there, the talent's there, the teachers are there. There's no device in hand.
So one very clear separation in this event in the haves and have-nots of who can remain resilient and have a more or less undisrupted experience is how that digital divide. So who's got fast internet, who's got great technology to be able to work with at home. Most of our employees, most of the people on this call, we're using fast internet, we're using modern devices, but that's not the case for everybody. And so I think from an infrastructure standpoint, I think being able to have national and even more regional initiatives to make sure that internet is a right for everybody, so everybody can have high-speed internet all around the country. Make sure that people have access to the technology that they need to be able to be educated, to be able to get the health care that they need. I think those things should be basic rights of any citizen in the country, and should not be the things driving any form of inequity that we might have. So I think you have some real significant national infrastructure policies will have to come as a result of this, I think, as the world moves to more digital platforms.
Absolutely. So for those that are joining, and especially the many times this is going to be replayed for folks, I have a two-part question. How can people get engaged in building this post-pandemic world and this infrastructure and what you're talking about from an entrepreneurial perspective? Where are the gaps in the market? And from an impact perspective, what can they be doing in their personal life?
Well, I'm certainly not an expert on the latter. I'll try and come up with some. I'll try and make up some stuff on the former. But on the latter, I think people just need to do whatever part they can, and in the smallest way possible, the biggest way possible, they can leave a dent. There's so many great organizations, nonprofits. I hesitate to name any because I'm going to leave so many out. But organizations like Tipping Point, Silicon Valley Community Foundation. On a daily basis, I'm hearing about all new nonprofits that are helping, helping with local communities in San Francisco, in the peninsula, to be able to help with, folks that maybe don't have the right kind of living conditions, shelter, food that they need right now. So anything that people can do to give back to organizations that are making an impact, I think would be great. And that's my advice on that front. And then on the entrepreneurial side, I think you will see a new era of digital technologies that get built over the coming years, and they're going to attack all ranges of problems. So healthcare, education, financial services, access to again more financial products and capabilities in the future. And I think you're going to see certainly a new wave of startups and a new wave of innovation. What I don't know, and we have to be somewhat practical about this. I don't know that that means an increase in amount of startups, because you're going to see also startups that will be negatively impacted by this event. And so I think it'll be more of a shifting of the ideas that people work on, the kind of startups that get created. But I'm not yet at the stage where I would say, hey, everybody should go start a company right now, because I do think you're going to be in some difficult uncharted territory on the startup side for at least a little while, until we figure out what the economy looks like. So I think everybody should be certainly thoughtful and prudent about diving headfirst in and starting a business.
That's sage advice. So
now, to be clear, I wouldn't take that advice myself, but for more level-headed people, I'd think about it.
Yeah, usually it's dive right in. Never a bad time to start a business. I would love to hear what has surprised you the most about this entire experience, perhaps how your customers have been using the product, or how your employees have responded. What has been the most surprising, interesting moment, you think?
Yeah, I think, I've had a lot of long-held beliefs that I was very confident in, but I didn't really, have any proof of, and many of those beliefs have changed. And you kind of just build this rhythm for so many years that you just keep doing the same thing without ever stepping back and really thinking like, why are we doing it this way? Take one small example that I think is representative of a large sweeping change you're going to see. If you think about just even business travel, so many of us and people in the community, we're on airplanes 30-40% of our time, and we're just flying different states and different countries and meeting customers and doing all these meetings. And And you just realize that you spent, a fourth of your year on an airplane or in an airport, and nothing against airports, but it's not the most awesome place to spend your hours, and then your flight gets delayed by 4 hours, and you're sitting on the tarmac, and it's just like, this is just no way to live. So
No.
when you think about just being able to hop on a video and with a customer, with your team, or with your whole organization, you're seeing the power of these types of technologies that we've always had, but you never had the singular event where we all had to use them together. And so what's so sometimes surprising about this is we've always had the technologies that we've needed. We've had the cloud infrastructure, we've had the video conferencing, we've had the collaboration tools, but now we're all forced to use them at once, and that's changing our culture literally in real time. And I think that's I'm excited by that part of the change, and I'm obviously very, very hopeful and aware that we also have to make sure that we build an economy that everybody can participate in, and make sure that we can stay healthy in the process.
Yeah, this is such a fascinating, widespread adoption all at once. Nothing is really catalyzes that typically, unless you have a world-changing event, right?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, there's no precedent for what we're seeing in terms of the global scale of instant technology standardization of many of these new social norms and technology shifts. So it's just never happened before.
So to leave off this conversation before we get to the end, I would love to know what piece of advice would you like to leave the audience with? We have a lot of tech folks that are joining, probably a lot of people wondering what's next for the industry, how they can be a part of building a better world. What would you say to them?
Well, I think, I'm seeing so many amazing companies step up and help their communities right now by making sure that their products are available for free or cheaper than normal, and giving back and making sure to invest in local initiatives. Organizations like Apple, Cisco, so many others are either putting large amounts of capital or their own talent and resources into helping with many of these challenges. Salesforce, Mark Benioff, et cetera, all leaning into that. So I think we all have to try and stay as humble as possible in this event. We know that there are so many businesses that are impacted all around the country and world. Many of us are lucky to be in companies that are digital first, and they're already in the cloud, and they're either growing or they're less impacted by this event. And we have to be thoughtful about our broader communities and the economy. And so we have to find a way to make sure small businesses, local businesses can serve their customers in a healthy and safe way. But we have to make sure that they can get back to work, they can keep growing. And I'm optimistic that you're going to see new surprising transformations in the economy. I think that this is showing and highlighting how many parts of our economy could be different and could grow in different ways as a result of this. Think about childcare, think about education, think about healthcare. You're going to see new growth sectors emerge out of nowhere. Once again, it's safe to do so. So I'm optimistic on that. And then, I think it's going to be also challenging if you're an airline for a while, and it's going to be challenging if you're maybe a big department store for a while. And we have to just make sure that the folks that were in those jobs are able to hopefully find opportunity and be able to find all new types of jobs and careers in the places that might be growing as a result of this.
Bring everybody aboard. All right, last question. Where do you want to eat the most as soon as the shelter in place is lifted?
I'm probably just going to go to Shake Shack. So I've been getting delivery recently, but I'd like to just go into the Shake Shack, see a bunch of people, and that would be exciting.
Just humans.
Humans at Shake Shack.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to do a quick call to action, and I'll let you add anything if you want, Aaron. So because of mass unemployment causing COVID-19, as the mass unemployment caused by COVID-19, many folks are struggling right now. And so we want everyone that is joined today to know that you can join Feeding America, and we're sending the link in the chat. And if you look up Feeding America, you can find out how to actually contact your local food bank, because our communities are suffering, and we want to make sure that we can give back and make the most meaningful impact in our own backyard. Anything you want to add to that call to action?
No, I think that's a fantastic organization, and we'll be making sure to support.
Awesome. All right. Erin Levy, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you everybody for joining us. It's been an invigorating talk, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you.